want
I wanted to bring up.
to, hang on a second.
You heard of being a straw man? I wanted to give you a few minutes. I got this Jordan Maxwell video, and it explains the history behind why we're a straw man and a real man. It's different. I just want to take a minute to listen to that.
You need to understand that when even on your check, when you're writing a check, the place where you put your name on a check, look at that line, what you're signing on, and get a magnifying glass, and you will find that's not a solid line to sign your name on. That is written, it's a typewritten sentence that's been honed down to microscopic size. Get a magnifying glass and read on a check what is said, where you sign your name. That's why the attorneys tell you better check the small print. The small print is ultra small. Where you sign your name on a check is saying something. Go back and read it. You need to understand that according to the old Phoenician Canaanite system, which we call today our judicial, educational judicial system, there is no law in this country or in the Western world, no law, federal, state, county, city, commercial, it makes no difference. There is no law on the books anywhere in this country that applies to you as an individual creature. There is no law. Because the people who designed the system thousands of years ago realized that there's two of you. There's the one that your mother gave birth to, that God created, so to speak. And even your mother didn't know what you were doing. Even your father and your mother have no idea what you're thinking or what you will do. You don't even know. So consequently, they have no control over you, your flesh and blood self. But somebody has to control this show. And so consequently, the ancient Phoenician Canaanites developed a system by which they would assign to every person a second you. And this is the way it works in America. There is two of you. Just as there are two states in this country, of every state is two states. You have the state of Nevada and Nevada State. You have Cal State, California State, and State of California. Not the same thing at all. California State, according to the law, is one thing. State of California is totally different. Has nothing to do with each other at all. It's the difference between being a lawyer and an attorney. Has nothing to do with them at all. It's totally separate words, means totally separate thing. Consequently, when you understand how words and terms are used and symbols are used, then we go back to the idea of the court. And as I said, there is no law in this country on any books that applies to you. None. All law in the Western civilization applies only to cooperations, co-ops. All law applies only to corporations, period. Across the board, no end of sentence. Consequently, there is no law that applies to you personally, so consequently, the system has made each one of you a corporation. And how now do you distinguish which one, when someone's addressing you, that they're addressing you as the one that your mother gave birth to, or the corporate you? Very simple. According to British law, when you sign your name, upper and lower case, that is applying to your body. Your flesh and blood self is spelled, according to British and American law, upper and lower case, capital letter, lower case. That's you, your personal self. There is no law that can be applied to an upper and lower case name, period. No law at all can be applied to an upper and lower case name because there is no law over you. Therefore, every piece of important bills, insurance, driver's license, identification, taxes, I don't care what it is, if it's a piece of business, period, in any kind of way, shape, or form, your name must, by law, international maritime admiralty banking law, your name must appear in all capital letters. You will never get a bill or anything that has your name upper and lowercase, because there is no law that applies to an upper and lowercase name, period. So if Sears is going to send you a bill, you go into Baskin Robbins or Sears and you order a pair of shoes, what are you going to do? They're going to give you a ticket. And they're going to put it on your bill, and then they're expecting you to pay the bill. And consequently, they're going to charge you. Well, that's the same thing. You go into a courtroom. They're going to read out the charges. And the cop gave you the ticket. And you have been charged with speeding or whatever. And therefore, you have to pay the charge. Well, once you understand that in America, according to our laws in America, you cannot pay a bill. Did you know that? According to international banking law, Americans cannot pay a bill. So when you say, well, I got to pay this, I'll pay that bill, well, that's a term that we use, but in point of fact, lawfully, you cannot pay a bill. You can discharge a debt. You cannot pay a bill. So consequently, you need to understand, what do you mean discharge a debt? Now it gets back to the court again. Now it gets back to the symbols and emblems of why the judge wears a black robe. It has to do with the planet Saturn. Saturn is the god that inhibits. He's the inhibitor and the law god, the god of law who inhibits, who holds back. He holds back everything and teaches you a lesson the hard way. Saturn. And women were told in the ancient world to listen to their god Saturn, who incidentally was called Lord of the Rings. Okay? And consequently, they're still making movies in Hollywood on Lord of the Rings, the planet Saturn. Women were told to listen to their god, the Lord of the Rings, so they were wearing an ear ring. Men were to get married before Saturn, their god, so they would wear a wedding ring. Consequently, the king would be crowned before Saturn. Saturn would be the round crown, or the corona, the ring. Saturn, the god who is the inhibitor, the god of occult law, the mystical god Saturn, Lord of the Rings, who is in charge of and controls all occult law in the universe. This is why today we know that Saturn was referred to as El, E-L. El is a name that was given to the planet Saturn. And therefore, if you were worshiping Saturn, you represent the law, you were referred to in church today as an elder. How did you get to be an elder? You got to be an elder because you were one of the elites. How did you get to be an elite? You got elected. Because through elections, all of our system is based on occult, mystical words and terms going back to the planet Saturn, going back to the Phoenician Canaanite system of banking. Incidentally, where do you find a bank? We go to banks all the time. Where do you find a bank? Banks are on both sides of a river. They're called river banks. What does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the currency. Your money is referred to as the currency. This is why when you go to court, you have the current, electricity, because it's the juice. And if you don't have the juice, you don't have it. So if you don't have the juice, you can't capitalize. And capital is a Latin word, meaning money. You need...
Okay, that was the end of that. I wanted to share the history of why we have two of us. There's a natural man and a corporate man. I was hoping somebody can gain from that.
Yeah, but it was real good. And how much longer does it last? Because we might.
That was the end of it.
That's it, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Nelson, why don't you come up here and give us a lesson in the Constitution?
This is a Facebook reel.
Jordan Maxwell's really good. He's got a lot of good
Maybe it's on
videos.
YouTube.
Maybe you can find it, yeah.
What is the title?
There's a Facebook channel called Law of Attraction Zero.
Okay,
And that's the Facebook channel.
that should be a
No,
YouTube.
it's called the Magical Matrix. see us off the top.
Then, okay,
Jordan Maxwell Part 2, so
okay.
we're going by what we hear.
Stand right over here.
Okay, well, everybody give a good hand for Nelson coming back to talk to us.
I don't know which one of my hands is good or better.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Nelson. I'm a Pennsylvanian,
Oh, no.
and my understanding is, I'm going to give you what my current understanding is through all of our
We won't hold that
process.
against you, I guess.
And the purpose of today's talk is to talk about the organic law. Who can tell me what the first of the 4 documents in our United States of America organic law is? What's the name of the first document?
Declaration of Independence.
The Declaration of Independence, that's correct. What year was that?
17 something. No.
July 4, 1776.
Correct. July 4th, 1776. Who can tell me what the second document that comprises the organic law is?
Articles. Ordinance.
Articles of
The
Confederation.
second document.
Oh, no, that's Articles of Confederation.
The Articles of Confederation. So those were the several states all getting together and having, actually I don't think they were called several states at that point. They were just the states. And they formed a confederation. And the full name I like to use is the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. So these men, being from Europe and studying all the various republics over the previous couple thousand years, determined that they would make it a confederation and that it would be perpetual. So once one joined that confederation, they were not permitted to leave. And that gave some confidence to the people who were fighting King George in Great Britain at that time. What year was the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union first agreed upon?
1781. Yeah.
First year.
First year? That's when it's effective.
Maryland finally came along in 1781, but what was the first year?
1779?
77. So we're fighting the war, July 4th. They all get together the following year and come up with this organized government between the Union of States, the Perpetual Union. It was 1777. What is the third? Okay, so before we get to the third document, it's important to remember that there was a peace treaty signed in 1783. What was the name of that document? Treaty of Peace, 1783, is how they referred to it. That was between the king and the
Traders.
I think it was the definitive Treaty of Peace of 17.
correct. That's actually very good. Yes, the definitive Treaty of Peace. Now, some will say, and could be very well true, that Great Britain, the King of Great Britain, claimed to be the arch-treasurer and prince-elector of both Great Britain, Ireland, he was in France, and the United States of America. Regardless, the men at the time who were fighting and dying and risking their lives and their fortunes felt it was okay to sign what they signed. For whatever reason, my humble opinion is they could either continue fighting forever and have another 100 years war, or they could cut a deal and say, okay, we fought to this standoff. You're going to make everyone that's born on the land here, when they come of age, a prince on the land, provided they can maintain their freedom as we, meaning Great Britain and all of his scoundrels, will attempt to restore their power that they had over the colonies. That's kind of my perspective. So, that is it's not one of the founding documents, it's not one of the organic laws, but it's in between the second and the third one. So, what I like to do when I study, I learned that I study a document and put my mind in that time frame. If I'm reading the Declaration of Independence, to study it, I try not to think about today for a little while. I kind of say, okay, if I'm back there then, that's what Jefferson wrote because of what was happening. Now, we discuss all the time in our circles that many of the same grievances that were established in the Declaration of Independence are happening today. Many of us are victims of those overreaches. And we feel they, of course, are against our natural rights, which they are, but what do we do about it? And that's what we're all in the process of attempting to come up with a battle plan that can, with the same speed that they pull me over for going 6 miles an hour over the speed limit, is the same speed we're going to file what we have to jail them for violating our rights, our unalienable rights. Okay, what was the third document of organic law? This is all found on the house.gov webpage. There's like at least 50 titles of law, U.S. code. This is called front matter. The four documents I'm referring to are called organic law, and it says front matter. So this is what's starting the country. So we've got through 2. We're now in 1781. We're now in 1783. The Treaty of Peace is signed and agreed upon. We're now still operating under the Articles of Confederation. The people find out it's not working great. There's flaws in it. It was done during a time of war. Wasn't thought out the best way possible. So we're now in a different place. So they decide to reconvene or convene and do a constitution. But 2 months before the constitution was agreed upon, which is the fourth document, what was the third document?
Northwest Ordinance Treaty, territory.
Right, I believe it's called something to the effect of an ordinance for the government of the territory northwest of the River Ohio, which included Ohio, Indiana, Michigan possibly, Illinois, there might have been one other. Who can tell me what state in 1783 to 1787 claimed the Northwest Territory? What state? There were 13 states. Which state?
I'm guessing Virginia.
You guessed correctly. And that was one of the reasons when they built the Constitution, they stated, Delaware's a small state, we have no power against a big state like Virginia, you'll run roughshod. That's where the Senate came in at the end of the day, that they had 2. So we have the Northwest Ordinance, and I'm going to give you, if you have a pen and paper, you do nothing else today, write down section 14, articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Northwest Ordinance. I hope to get to it. I have to leave at some point before the end of the meeting because I have another place to go. But we are going to get to that, but we're going to start with the declaration. But I just wanted to go through the organic law.
Okay, so section 14.
Section 14 of the Northwest Ordinance, Articles 1, 2, and 3. When we read these slowly, you will recognize they're describing many many of our common law rights that they're preserving. Why was the Northwest Ordinance written? What was one reason? One reason was that they had decided to give the land northwest of the River Ohio and all the land west of the Appalachians to the Mississippi River to put it under the control 2 months from now of this government we're creating called the United States. Yeah.
I already invoiced the customer for a job I'm finishing, so I need to get on out of here. Don't be interrupted.
Okay, Steve, thank you for coming out, and Proverbs 28 was exceptional. I have to read it tonight. Go over it slowly. It's like, wow.
Hey Nelson, I think if you put the mic down lower, I think it might help,
Okay, I'll try that.
because of the beard.
How far?
That sounds pretty good there.
Okay, all right. So we're going to read that. If someone can pull it up for me, that would help. We'll have them read it at some point. Section 14, Northwest Ordinance, Articles 1, 2, and 3. And when we hear the language, we're like, wow, that's what I need. I need my assurance. So what my understanding of what was happening was the founding fathers knew we were creating this government, and we knew that the land northwest of the River Ohio was going to be under the control not of the state government, but under this federal government, under a Congress. And the Congress was going to make the rules and regulations for that land until such time as it became a state, a free state, and able to get all of the privileges and immunities that all the other original states had. So if I was living in Pennsylvania as a citizen, capital C citizen, with all the rights and immunities of a free man, and I walked out to Ohio, I'm now federal property. That's why they had to make sure everyone was assured that they would have all their common law rights mentioned. We also noticed that in the Northwest Ordinance, it surprised me as I was studying, most of the words are all in lowercase. Who can tell me what the significance of that is, rather than upper and lower or all uppercase? Why was the Northwest Ordinance written in almost all lowercase? What was being assured to us, the common man?
It was for the living.
The living, and it was
Common law.
common law, small c, small l. When I learned to study the various documents, I also learned that many documents out there, whether it's by mistake or for some nefarious reason, many of our documents have the wrong punctuation, they have the wrong capitalization in the different places, and that's to confuse us. So if you have Darren's email, he has a copy of the original certified copies of all these documents. And so you can get them for yourself, it won't cost you anything, and then you can see for yourself which ones are the right one, because we have to know where we stand. You know, we talk about what's your standing. My standing is the organic law. And that's what preserves our freedoms. And so then the fourth document, of course, is the Constitution of the United States. So before I proceed and go back to the Declaration of Independence, which we're going to have John F. Kennedy read off of YouTube, how do we know there is more than one Constitution? We know that because how many here think that there's one Constitution as we sit here today? They were sure there was just one. You, sir? Did you know there was two constitutions? No? I'm going to give you the information today that you can study on your own of why this is true. And the reason we need to know this is the gold fringe flag people are assaulting us with the second constitution. The regulations are under the second constitution. Okay, the first constitution is called the Constitution of the United States. The second constitution is the Constitution of the United States of America. When I was locked up for a felony that was contrived, I had the Congressman Jeff Van Drew from New Jersey, his office send me, I said, send me the copy of the Constitution that this congressman agrees to uphold, support. And they sent me this, the Constitution of the United States of America. There are different words in this one. The only place it's different is in Article 3, Section 2, I believe, where it says, the first Constitution says, and this is me, this is my original Constitution. That's how I now phrase it for myself. I claim the original Constitution of 1787. Those are my words. I might add the Constitution of the United States, but I like to use original Constitution. That way I'm telling them where I stand. And it says in here, the United States the judicial power of the United States shall extend, this is what it says in here, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party. And the word party is in a capital P. And by the way, all words persons in this one is a capital P. That's why in the 14th Amendment they switch it to a small p because it's no longer under the original. So, to controversies, the judicial power shall extend to controversies to which the United States shall be a party. That means it must be. So when they violate my unalienable rights, my understanding is I can make the United States come into court and force them to deal with me under my terms, as opposed to theirs. The Constitution of the United States of America, that is my understanding is this is what the House of Representatives operates under, where they create all their bills. And it says in here, to controversies to which the United States will be a party. That means they have to agree to come to court. Okay.
So one thing, Nelson, in Black's Law Dictionary, person is described as means corporation. So when you see the word person, Black's Law Dictionary, you look up the definition. Person means corporation. People are the living. Persons are the corporation.
Also, real quickly, have the document at the 1967 congressional hearing of the Senate. Page 12 says that the 14th Amendment was never ratified because all the states were not there. U.S. citizen does not exist.
I personally don't like to use the word U.S. citizen, and the reason for that is the 14th Amendment describes it specifically as citizen of the United States. When I realized I was under martial law rule and I needed health care, and Glenn and some others taught me that that is owed to the people who are under martial law rule, I went ahead and stuck to my guns and had any health care I need for the last decade, no charge, no co-pays, nothing. Now, I still would like to access my trust account. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But for now, at least getting the health care is helpful without having to take anything out of my book. So the word citizen in the Constitution of the United States is always capitalized. The word person is always capitalized. When something is capitalized, my understanding is in grammar, it means it's subject to something or someone else. That's my understanding. So you can test it as you go on. Okay, here's John F. Kennedy. If you want to open up the Declaration of Independence, you can follow along, but it takes about 10 minutes. But we're going to go through the whole thing, and then I'm going to pick up where I left off at the last presentation, so it has some flow. So this is John F. Kennedy reading the Declaration of Independence.
Dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends.
Did you know that Amazon has a $15 million fund that they have to pay out every month? And here's how deep.
Did you know?
It is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new gods for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having indirect objects the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish their right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together a legislative body that places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative power, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriation of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial, from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the form of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the work of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, but to fall themselves by their hand. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an indistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
Try this honey trick tonight, and tomorrow you'll wake up with your tools standing tall. Want to know the dirty little secret of the devil?
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of a right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
I'm going to ask everybody to think of one or two things that you heard and comment on them, and we'll dig them out and then talk about how that's still happening today and what our solution may be. So, in the Declaration of Independence, did you hear anything that struck you? Because it was long.
Yeah, one of the grievances was denial of trial-based jury. Right back in the same situation.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you look up the adjective of jury, all right, so they give you a jury trial now. Look up the adjective of the word jury. It says a rig in an emergency, all right, since we're under the emergency, all right, this is where the emergency is, where the executive branch gets all its power. That's how Trump has, and so either party uses the executive branch to prolong the emergency, because it allows them to sign this thing like all these executive orders. But one of the things is, he mentioned about Great Britain. Does he know that there's a second constitution? Does he know about the 1871 one? Does he know that we made contracted with Great Britain, used our citizens as collateral, right, to create all this stuff with the Federal Reserve, all this stuff? You know, they use your all caps name as collateral for their debt. If you ever get a check from the Treasury, and Glenn's talked about this before, the Treasury Direct account is where they keep this money. And if you look at a check from the Treasury, there's a B, and that number beside it is a 9-figure number. That's how much you're worth to the government because they've collateralized this. You know, because they took away the gold and silver. And so you're exactly right about not being able to pay debt. But anyways.
He talked about the right of due process by the king being taken away as well.
Which one? What was that?
That was, he was talking about that with the supplemental rights that he was talking about, you know, being able to take away due process. They were protecting the Freds,
Protecting the large bodies of armed troops by a mock trial for punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these. Mock trials. Tell us about it. Mock trials. So they know they can outlast us by virtue of the state being in perpetuity and we have an end to our lives. So they like to. So what as of today, I found out I might not be able to return to New Jersey because I thought I had the municipal warrant defeated, but because we're in the process of filing an impeachment and criminal charges against a half a dozen municipal officers, they may basically put me away without more due process. So I may not be able to go back to New Jersey until we settle what's happening, because even though it's a municipal, and even though there is a true flag flying in city council, the gold fringe flag is still flying in a municipal. And the chief of police, if he wants to keep his job, he has a gold fringe flag on his shoulder. So what does he do? And then the question is who, when our rights are violated, who's responsible? Joe, in your case, where are you going with who you think is responsible?
God wills it, God wills it. You know, I'm not a good one to ask anything. I'm so disgusted with the whole deal. However, I will say that I was in some jail up there, and they had a deceptively similar name to my own. It was in all capital letters. And they said, sign here. I said, that's not my name. They said, what do you mean it's not your name? I said, that's not the name my parents gave me. All capital letters. That's not my name. That's not the name my parents gave me. He said, sign it. I said, what are you going to do if I don't sign it? He said, you see that room over there? It's 40 degrees in there. I'm going to put you in there with no coat, no blanket, and no pillow. And in 3 or 4 days, if I say your name is Minnie Mouse, you'll sign it. So sign it. Okay? Have I made my point?
I saw on my feed today, it recognizes what part of the country I'm in, and it turns out that since the current sheriff, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, of Tarrant County has taken over, how many people have died in Tarrant County?
75 or something like that.
Over 70. And now that a couple of... In the jail. Now, a couple of people have gotten up in front of Tarrant County, probably commissioner's office or public speaking. All of a sudden, they're getting ready to read the riot act to them and to put them in jail just because they got a little upset that 70 people are dead.
It's only 70.
One is a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic. I heard that. I think that was Bill Clinton, maybe. Somebody.
I think it was Stalin.
Was it Stalin?
Probably,
Okay,
yeah.
So the word transport, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Is that what they're doing today? Absolutely. Tried for pretended offenses. So we like to stand up and say, I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't hurt any property. It's not my name. The gold fringe flag, this, that. What do? We could care less. Put your hands behind your back. Good luck getting out.
Because that signature creates the bonds, right? Which they're creating money. The court is a bank, right? The court is a bank. They're creating the bonds. They trade them through a Series 7 broker out the back door of the courthouse and put them on the International Stock Exchange on a 30-year yield. That's why they want that signature.
So how do we defeat it? Do we know yet? It's okay if we don't. That's why we're discussing it. Because if and when we ever do learn to defeat with a high percentage of success, now we're getting somewhere.
Well, I talked to here today, and I have a flash drive of a bunch of stuff that I've acquired from other people. One of those is a document by Bo Walters who says that once you get your document, the reason why we go there and we say that we're not in your jurisdiction and all this is that we don't know that they created a power of attorney to bring you into that. So that's one thing you have to defeat the power of attorney they created against you. The second thing is you have to go through the Clerk's Access website and find the cage code associated with the bond, which will lead you down the rabbit hole to find out, to prove the fraud. In his case, he found a liable party, which they said was no liability, was the representative of the Commission of Agriculture for the council committee in his town. So it was the council committee member that created the bond as the responsible party. And so when you start filing the cage code and following his process, he says you have to understand Title 31, which is a dark rabbit hole, but he says, we always talk about that they're committing fraud, but nobody brings the evidence. He says, this is the way you bring the evidence to prove the fraud. Now you're in a different court.
Question, is it Patriot myth or is he successful?
He has actually been successful.
Okay, good, that's good. Now,
You use the word cage code?
Cage code is the word that you use on the clerk's access. Probably saying the website wrong, but it's in the document. He says you have to access through the clerk's website to find the cage codes, and you can get through it. And then it will start leading you down to the path of who's responsible, but it will say they're not responsible, even though they're the ones that committed. So you have to do further evidence. But what leads you to is the fact that you're proving the fraud that they're not going to want out there.
So now what?
Well, that's the evidence. Now you say you're doing, they don't want to say they're doing business as. They're going to want to work on remedy because now you've brought the evidence of the fraud that they don't want the public to know about.
So you need a paper trail
Yes.
showing all the
Yeah,
evidence.
just going in
Who
there
started
saying
it,
that
who
you're
was
doing
next.
fraud in that. He says everybody goes to jail because they never prove the evidence of the bond.
They just make a claim, they don't go back and prove the evidence.
Yes.
So how does we as men, one who succeeds in proving this evidence, is it just to stop that case against that man? How do we say, okay, that's good, but now how do we make them pay?
I haven't read the document all the way. I've gotten to that point. I was going to share it with Aaron so that he can distribute it as he needs. And also what you're doing is that you're showing the integrity of the court is now tarnished, and now they're going to. He doesn't say that you're going to get them thrown in prison. He doesn't get to say that you're going to collapse it, but now you're working remedy in your case.
Right, so basically it's they get to continue with their crimes. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, because they're not going to let you, once
You
the
can't
fraud is
publicize
out.
it. They'll sell out and you sign a non-disclosure.
Well, once you start bitching the evidence and start trying to show it to them, they're going to.
We don't know that yet, so maybe Darren, at some point after you prove it all out, you can return and put it on the record.
Yeah, I'm still reading it as well,
Okay. Well, that's good that somebody is successful. I mean, it's one thing to stop them. I thought I stopped them, but apparently they're going to break the law.
They released him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they're till the next time they want to arrest them. So what we have to do as patriots, is actually find our own response that causes them to have sleepless nights. And actually because of my situation, currently it's possible people will, they're dead to rights. They had no oath, they arrested me, took my life, liberty, and property. It was a conspiracy. I gave them over 6 months of notice. They did nothing. And so there's no
When you start hitting them in their pocketbook and bringing attention to the bonds, which is part of the what people refer to as the W4 sandbox, right? Because they're creating this money on in your name they gave you or whatever. They're allowing that to be like the surety for these bonds that are created.
Right.
And when you create a tax issue out of it, when you start telling them and you inform the Treasury or the Treasury Inspector General and you inform the IRS, they'll give you a control number saying, hey, we're gonna look into this.
Have you done that?
I know people that have, and this stuff goes away. This stuff goes away. And I know people that have never showed up into court, just done it by paperwork, and it's all gone away. But it's taking time, you know, but you create a tax issue, then you get these two, huge agencies looking down this court, like, what's going on over here?
But aren't these agencies just in on it with them?
Would you make a tax issue out of it? They don't want to give up their tax information because they're creating these bonds tax-free. Then they go to what's that?
The criminals, they're committing crimes and they're getting away with it still, even after they supposedly get caught by one of us. Correct?
Correct. But it's my opinion that, like in Deb's case, she had found her bond being traded on the stock market, and she had the evidence, but she never used it. And the other thing is that I wanted to say, I was following a guy on TikTok, which I got rid of TikTok, which I wish I never did. I can't get back on there. He was talking about to get into a common law court, you have to get rid of the gold flag fringe in the courtroom. And he also said that the very first thing, one of the things that you do when you show up, you have to state that I am one of the people. Nobody does that.
Good advice. A friend of mine said I come from a foreign jurisdiction, but adding on one of the people is good. Back to the Declaration of Independence. The King has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. So most of us here have experienced the war being waged against us. So from a solution standpoint, Glenn, would you have a moment just to speak briefly on the solution to them waging war against us?
War against the Constitution.
Well, actually, once you tell them you're one of the people, that creates a big problem for them. And but you can convene common law juries and impeach them. Remove them from office.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's something we are trying shortly, and we'll get back to you.
Hopefully on Glenn's website or his YouTube channel, Sovereign Living, you'll have some updates on that, hopefully within the next couple months from today, which is January of 25. We're continuing on. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. Does that sound a little bit like the law enforcement officers and the judges and the prosecutors they've been constrained? The king, the crown has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas through the Cestacate Trust, through the birth certificate name, through the system, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners, execute, the executive branch, of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. So that's the choice for the chief of police right now, regarding me. Does he go ahead and sacrifice me, or does he sacrifice his own life, his future, his income, his career? And I gave them an opportunity to pay in a nice way with no threat, and they have about a month to respond, and likely they're not going to, which will mean we go ahead with our reporting the crime and impeaching him from his office, and he loses either way, unfortunately. That's what happens when you take an oath. Actually, in his case, he never even had the oath. Neither did
He didn't have an oath on record?
Nope. The whole 95% of the whole entire police force had no oath.
There's
And I-
some big penalties there.
And I came forward and told the city solicitor and the city council 3 different times. They did nothing. Subsequent to that, I was put in handcuffs and put in a jail cell. When I was in the jail cell by this captain, who's now chief, I told the captain, did you know you don't have an oath of office on file with the clerk to support this Constitution? He didn't say anything. I said, are you aware your chief of police has no oath? No answer. Are you aware that the city solicitor has no oath? No answer. Are you aware that over 90% of all the police officers in this town have not had an oath in over a decade? No answer. I said, perhaps you can go call the city solicitor and have her come to this jail cell and we can discuss why I refused to leave. Because they wanted me to sign an agreement to show up for court. And I said, no, I wouldn't do it. And I won't leave. You brought me here, I think I'll stay. True story.
Yeah, there's the problem right there.
The city solicitor came to this was February 25th, 2020. The city solicitor came to the jail cell 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, and she said, what do we have to do to get you to leave? I said, well, there's a case called Trevisan versus Tampa, $1,000 a minute for false arrest. You have a false warrant out for my arrest, he has no oath. You bring me a check for $60,000, I'll cut it in half, and I'll leave. I've been there 2 hours. She said, we can't do that, the case hasn't been adjudicated. I said, well then I guess I'll stay. We walked out of the jail cell, went away. About a half hour later, a sergeant comes back. He said to me, you can stay, but under the terms no water and no food. This is not the county jail. We're not set up for that. I accepted their offer. I said, fine, I'll stay. No food, no water. 22 hours later, I left of my own free will because I had made my point and had an opportunity. The jail cell door was open the entire 22 hours. And every hour they would say, you're free to leave. You're free to go. I said, no thank you, I like my accommodations. 22 hours of, it's all one big report. And so, I say all that to say, we can kind of, it's partly educating them. Eventually, like instead of us driving around looking at the military police in their cars, looking at us, we will have a pamphlet that we approach them and hand it to them with some information about what they need to know. Hopefully they won't take it negatively. In every stage of these oppressions, we, meaning the colonists, have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. Does that sound like today? A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Can we say the mayor, the city council, the chief of police, the local senator, state senators and state congress, state representatives? Can we say the governor, the state attorney general? By the way, and off topic just a little, my understanding from my research is the only bar member responsible to give me or you as a man common law, besides our common law jury from the state, who is the only bar member in each state obliged to give us common law?
The Attorney General?
That is correct, the state attorney general. So I have addressed that, and it appears to be the case. And he just kind of is acting dumb, like he's just going to let them do what they want, because they're all preserving their whole system. It's sad, but that's the case. This is good. We have warned them from time to time by the attempts of their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. The state constitution of New Jersey since 1844 says that no warrant shall issue. I want you to listen for the word that's missing, which is in the Bill of Rights. No warrant shall issue unless it particularly describes the place to be searched and the papers and things to be seized. What word is missing? Every warrant in New Jersey mentions a paper and a thing. What does it not mention?
It just says paper or papers.
Papers and things. No warrant shall issue unless it particularly describes the papers and things to be seized.
What are the things?
Who can read I think it's the sixth, what is it, the fifth or sixth amendment? Look that up real
It
quick.
has to have the beats and bounds of the.
Question is, what word is missing from the Bill of Rights? And I'm going to explain to you, forgive me, your first name again?
Leonard.
Leonard. I'm going to explain to you my understanding of the Bill of Rights, the second Constitution, and the first Constitution, and why it all makes sense, why it happened in that order. But let me first get to amendment.
It's kind of hard to see.
Here.
It's so dark in here.
Just old.
Sorry.
You underneath that light, maybe you can read it.
I'll get it. I should have, okay. Fourth Amendment. Remember search and seizure? Fourth Amendment. Now remember,
You're to be secure,
okay.
it says, right?
Right. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, paper, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. You know, here it says, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation and particularly describing the place to be searched, which was true in New Jersey. But then it says this under the Bill of Rights, and the persons or things to be seized.
So it has to identify.
New Jersey said papers and things. Why does it say papers and things? What happened to persons? I'll tell you what happened. Monarchy, the bankers, and the Vatican made all crimes commercial in 1844 in New Jersey. They commercialized crime. Like Glenn likes to say, they're assaulting us with the Commerce Clause. So every warrant in New Jersey since 1844 that's based upon statutes and not actual injury or crime has been color of law. But no one's ever brought it up that I know of. You just go right along, don't bother studying, and therefore we suffer the consequences. All right, I want to do, before I run out of time, Section 14. You have to hear this music. Section 14, excuse me. Yeah, Section 14, Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Northwest Ordinance. Could somebody pull that up on their phone, please? Section 14. My friend Charlie, who passed away, who pointed out to me the most important, what he felt, and I happen to agree. The most important thing, when I'm approached by a police officer, I ask them, I tell them I accept your oath of office, which Glenn likes to say, and then they have an oath to support the Constitution of the United States. And I ask them if they know what Article 6, Clause 1 says every time they've not answered me. I don't expect them to know. But I put it on the record on the camera so that when it comes up, then they can notice. This is what Charlie does. He was never arrested, to my knowledge, in his life. But I will tell you that I was in jail, and my family said when he visited New Jersey and visited the courthouse where they were holding me, he got such a bad vibe, he got out of town before he knew what hit him because he could sense they could care less about the law.
Article 6, Section 1, you said?
Section 14.
Oh, okay.
Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Northwest Ordinance. So what but before I do that, this is Article 6, Clause 1. Like, it kind of just, we keep hearing, yes, sir.
We're subjected to unwarranted searches and seizures all the time.
We are subjected to unwarranted searches and seizures all the time. They run through a database, they send your name, and they say, well, I want a search run on this guy or whatever. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them. They don't issue warrants. They couldn't care less about warrants. They couldn't care less about due process of law.
I have the article,
Okay, hold on, I'll get to it.
all right.
Yes, I agree with you, Joe, and the good news is there's more of us now growing.
That's true.
And we are going to be like the gnats and the fire ants. So we're going to crawl up the side of the boot and get underneath of their gold stripe down their...
The guillotine, the guillotine.
Maybe. Could end up
The
there.
militia.
The militia.
The people.
Well, the question I have for my militia, which the Attorney General and the Governor and the Senate of each state approves the militia, the retired general, I believe he has a military duty when we approach him properly. I think we've not been approaching him properly. And that's what we're working on now, is the proper way to force them. Government is force, according to Washington. It's not reason, it's not logic.
It's force.
It's force. So, Article 6, Clause 1. Write it down, study it, please. Article 6, Clause 1. All debts and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States. All debts and engagements. Remember, we talked about organic law. Look it up today. Congress says, yeah, organic law, the first 3 documents, then this Constitution. Those are engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid. We're about to talk about Section 14 of the Northwest Ordinance, common law, all lowercase. 5 or 6 or 7 things that we all know we're entitled to, but who's ever brought it up? I have. The judge said denied in a maritime court. He could have said anything. It didn't matter. He was not forced to in that court. He wanted me to appeal. I could have appealed, and that appeal judge would have said, go ahead, go back to your church, because now you're in a court of record. But I'm in a maritime court. I'm in a dead place. Nothing matters. So Article 6 shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. So the Confederation is still a valid thing. The states, the sovereign states, which they surrendered some of their sovereignty under limitations of power. Yes, Glenn.
I think there's good reason to believe that the Confederacy still exists too. The reason is because in 1845, when Texas was supposed to have joined the Union, it says in the preamble to the Act, in 1845, the Act of Congress, it says extending the laws of the United States over the state of Texas. It says Texas has joined the Confederacy and the Union.
Explain the difference.
Well, the Confederacy is the Articles of Confederation. Yeah. So that's not the Southern Confederacy. Southern Confederacy didn't exist at the time. The Confederacy they're talking about is the Articles of Confederation. So both of them exist. And some states are part of both, and some states are only part of the Union. Think about it. So the states that joined, especially after the Civil War, they just joined the Union. They didn't join the Confederacy.
Great point.
Anyways.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good angle. Yeah.
A good angle.
But it's a good thing you don't think about sometimes, because like Oregon, you know, all those, yeah.
The Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, Article 1 says, it's important how it's written. I have documents that I highlighted, so you don't have to do all the work. It took me hundreds of hours to get all this information together. It's all in one place. You can see the best grammar along with a certified copy from the National Archives, which is, they make it difficult to read. Literally, you can't read it. They do it on purpose. They're hard. But that's because we're coming for it. In peace.
Yes.
It says, Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation, 1777, the style, S-T-I-L-E, that means how it's written, and we know that, I didn't know it, but I learned that the word style means a set of steps over a stone wall or something of that
Kind of
nature.
like a bridge over
Bridge,
water.
and think about it, a turnstile. I want to go from out here to inside the subway. I have to go through the turnstile. It turns, it's a style. So the style, listen to this, the style of this confederacy. Now the word style is in capital. The words this confederacy is lowercase. So the confederacy, now why did Glenn, when I bet you that what Glenn just mentioned in this Texas situation, that word confederacy there is capitalized. Why? Because the confederacy that they're mentioning is the government, but this confederacy is the common law rights of the men that were of those states and all the people that they represented. So the style of this confederacy shall be, remember Article 6, Clause 1, the Confederation still exists today. So I claim this confederacy, same as Texas did. This confederacy, the style of this confederacy shall be, quote, the United States of America, period, end quote. That is the first time the United States of America was written in that manner.
You're talking all caps or first letter cap?
Proper, first letter. Guess what treaty, which we talked about it, says it's between His Britannic Majesty and capital T, the United States of America. Which treaty do you think between Great Britain and us? There's only 4 treaties active right now with us and Great Britain. Yes, sir.
Is that the Treaty of Ghent?
You are correct. Now guess what? Go online. It's never written that way. I had to get the original from the archives, and that was one of the happiest days of my life. Because it's written the same way as this the style of this confederacy. The king is recognizing in the Treaty of Ghent this confederacy. How is it written? The United States of America with a capital T. That's my view. Because they're pretty important. They do things for a reason when they write treaties. Yes.
In the definitive Treaty of Peace, it says United States of America. It doesn't say the United States of America. It just says United States of America. And King George was Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire and the United States of America. I don't think it was the. I think it was just, was it? You sure? Definitive Treaty of Peace?
It says not small t.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying. It was small t, small the.
You said D. The United States. That's how we differentiate. No, I'm serious.
Well, I just said it was United States of America. So the is just a participle, basically.
I think when I was in grammar school in Philadelphia, there were a bunch of Jewish teachers. There's 300,000 Jews today in Philadelphia. You know what they told me when I was trying to pass the test in civics, 3rd grade? I said, it's the United States. I felt like they were beating me over the head. It is not the United States. It's the United States of America. They understood the importance, which I didn't till now. the United States of America. And so the Treaty of Ghent, which I use in my crimes that they commit against me, I'm going to be likely accusing the King of England today and his people of violating the Treaty of Ghent. It's an international treaty that they're violating. And if they're doing it through the United States, through the gold fringe flag, however they're doing it, it's an international crime. Which makes sense. Those of us who have been attacked, making war against us, through the gold fringe flag, the United States, we know it's not our country. It's their country. It's we created the original United States, and that's why I believe every judicial and executive officer, at the end of the day, has to follow the oath. When they don't, we have not figured out how to hold them to it and make them pay when they don't. That's our problem. That's why we're in the process of preparing impeachment papers to see if that works. It was just filing with the FBI and Department of Justice. The only thing it does is get them fired, maybe. Ned.
There were people that were stating that the history of the gold fringe flag actually comes from the king saying that he's infringing on our rights. That's where they say the gold fringe flag comes from.
Is there anything to back that up?
It was on TikTok. I don't have the videos anymore, but they were stating where the history of that came from through the king.
Yeah, it also came from the days of piracy, right? Because the pirates used to board other people's ships, they'd get their stuff, and then they'd take their flag and they'd sew fringes around it and raise it up with their Jolly Roger, right? So infringed means captured, right? So the infringed flag has been captured, so we know it's in the, why is a statue of Abraham Lincoln in the city of London? Why is that?
Your rights shall not be infringed.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Did you want to say something?
Well, he's asking a question.
Yeah.
He asked, why is there a statue of Abraham Lincoln in the city of London?
Yeah.
Because Abraham Lincoln got rid of the 13th Amendment.
Right.
That's why the 13th Amendment made it so that bar members couldn't hold an office of trust in America. And an office of trust is one that requires an oath of office. And so, prior to that, bar members and Abraham Lincoln facilitated the disappearance of the original 13th Amendment.
Right.
And so they're paying tribute to him and saying thanks.
So, yeah.
That's a very good point, Ned. And Joe over here mentioned fringe. They've been infringing. Okay? Makes sense, right?
Your rights shall not be infringed.
Your rights shall not be infringed. We have to study that.
Fringe around and limited.
Interesting.
It never ends.
It never ends. Why do I carry a passport? Because
We're at war.
we're at war. I need safe passage. This should be a must for everyone to carry at all times. Any kind of passport, you get a domestic,
The card.
what do they call that card?
Passport card, yeah.
Yeah, passport card, it'll have 4 or 5 stars. It's equivalent to this. Safe passage, it's an international crime for them to violate us. When they ask the name, I only give my first name now. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up with section 14, 1, 2, and 3, but before so, go ahead, Ned. And then somebody
On the
read.
passport, if you type in A, fair, capital F, 505.2, shows all the listings of the domestic, or of the diplomatic status. You have to put 09 on the passport application to get a national status.
You heard that?
No, it's really,
You done it?
Brendan Joe Williams, I'm gonna do it, it actually works. I gotta do it.
Okay, good. Well, get back to us when you have it in hand.
No, I don't understand that. The 09 goes where on the?
So
application?
the 8 FAM, I have gone to the website, created Google 8 FAM, capital FAM 505.2, and lists all the diplomatic codes for your diplomatic status.
Okay.
Read it, Joe Williams even points it out. It's at the top of the bottle, there's 3 abbreviations. One is E and D for endorsement. You put 09 there. That is for a national.
Passport.
Yes, and it also states that you can write to the Secretary of the State in a letter of authentication as a national, but you have to prove your national status, which would be, showing that they got rid of the U.S. citizen and stuff like that to the showing document.
My understanding from a man who did he was a member of Glenn's group, he enclosed a letter of explanation of his posterity, why he felt he deserved the full 5-star. And he was granted it. Okay, who can read for me just the first part of section 14, we'll just read it through twice. Just section 14, not article 1.
Okay, you just want the top, section 14?
Yeah.
Section 14 of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which is considered the Articles of Compact, essentially states that the provisions outlined in the ordinance, including Articles 1 and 2 and 3, are a permanent agreement between the original states and the future states formed by the Northwest Territory, and can only be changed with the mutual consent of all parties involved, essentially guaranteeing key rights like religious freedom, trial by jury, and access to education for the new states.
This just gives the points. I want the actual phraseology, which I'm going to pull up here on archives.gov. And if you write to Darren, he has a certified copy of the organic law, the 4 founding documents, certified copies for your records when you need them. Section 14. It is hereby ordained and declared by the authority aforesaid that the following articles, again, most of this is all lowercase, the following articles shall be considered as articles of compact between the original states and the people and states in the said territory, and forever remain unalterable unless by common consent. So the 2 points that my friend Charlie made to me out of this, section 14, is that the said territory is small t, it's the land under all of the states. But we're walking on the territory. So Congress initially had the right to make statutes for the capital T territory, but this Northwest Ordinance was guaranteeing the common law rights that we all have on the territory, small t. Okay? So the reason that's important is it said forever remain unalterable unless by common consent. And what Charlie understood that to mean, we hear, oh, I don't consent, I don't consent. We say I don't consent and they laugh at us, right? Well, you have to get to them ahead of time, meaning with the passport, the 5-star, they stand down because I'm not giving my consent. Now, at that point, when they violate, go right ahead. Now you've got them as far as they can't claim, what do you call it, when you claim ignorance, because you've told them.
Or they're not already immune either.
Right. So those 2 points, said territory. Okay, and again, it's a compact, listen to this, between the original states, 13, and the people, small p, common law people, and states in the said territory, meaning the territory they're creating. Why, and the key is, the answer is the gold French flag, why do we need to bring this back? The Northwest Ordinance.
Because it's good forever.
It's prior to the 1871.
Well, why did I need that? Did I need that on Pennsylvania or on New Jersey back then, the 13 original states? Did I need? No, because there was common law already in place.
Yeah, the Northwest Ordinance says you're always going to be entitled to proceedings according to the course of common law, trial by jury, not trial with a jury, trial by jury, and habeas corpus, etc., etc.
Yeah, I was about to get to that, Articles 1, 2, and 3. And then I'll finish with these three.
And then unfortunately I have to go on for the rest of the meeting. Article 1. Now listen, it says to wit. It's hereby ordained, to wit, Article 1. We're only going to do this. Article 1. No person demeaning himself in a peaceable and orderly manner shall ever be molested on account of his mode of worship or religious sentiments in the said territory.
Except for Jews.
I think they use that to defend themselves. If you ever read these stanzas of My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty, think about that. I always thought it was T-H-E-E. When I sung it, I thought I was in church. No. My country 'tis of T-H-E, T-H-E with a capital T. Sweet Land of Liberty. Land, the United States of America. Article 2. And I'll skip the parts that don't matter. The inhabitants of the said territory shall always be, this is Article 2 of Section 14, Northwest Ordinance, shall always be entitled to the benefits of the writ of habeas corpus and of the trial by jury, of judicial proceedings according to the course of the common law. All persons shall be bailable except for capital offenses, where the proof is evident and the presumption great. No man shall be deprived of his liberty or property, but by the judgment of his peers or the law of the land. They can't take our property, and that's pretty. Oh, and then the last thing it says that they shall not in any manner, the government basically shall not interfere with or affect private contracts or engagements bona fide and without fraud previously formed. And Article 3 has to do with religion and morality and never to be invaded. The Indians shall not be invaded. So that pretty much is my presentation for today. Any last questions? I have about 5 minutes if anybody else wants to make any comments or ask any questions.
What do you, go ahead, please. Here you go, Nelson. My question is, on your
Case with Ocean City, what would the charges be, you think, that they're going to try to arrest you on?
Failure to appear, contempt of court. And every time I've been in court, when the judge threatens me with contempt, I ask one question, and not one judge has ever answered my question. What's that? Correct, Joe. I say, will that be criminal contempt or civil contempt? And they do not answer. And you know what was interesting is when they first charged me with 2 felonies, and then I got in front of the judge's face and she added a contempt charge, criminal. When the time came to reduce everything to municipal charges on the 2 felonies, she thought she had me on the criminal contempt, but what am I entitled to if I'm charged with a crime? Trial by jury. You know what they had to do? Erase it, make it go away. They brought me back into court just for that because she forgot. She made it, she couldn't take that, she couldn't downgrade that to to a civil contempt because she had already made it a criminal. So when they threaten you with contempt, the question you ask, will that be criminal or civil? If they say criminal, so then I'm entitled to a trial by jury. Civil, you can't deprive a man of life or liberty or property without due process of law. You can't imprison someone for a civil fine, right? I mean, we know they do things that are off the, against the rules. That's the way they do things. And we are starting to be like the, I don't know what a particular army was that surrounded somebody, but we're surrounding them. Pretty soon they're going to have to put their weapons down.
Thermopylae, all over again.
Is that Thermopylae? Look it up, study it.
They do
Thank you,
in
Joe.
Texas, they arrest you for
Thank you,
civil.
Nelson.
Child support is civil and they arrest you for that.
Any more comments?
Also, on a traffic violation, it goes into a jailable offense now, even on Class B. It used to be $500 maximum fine, and they now can put you in jail.
For a traffic ticket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they impound your car.
Well, it used to, traffic citation was only a misdemeanor. It still is only a misdemeanor, but it was only a maximum fine of $500. Now they can jail you.
Right.
Well, that's what they say, and I've looked at it on the judge.
I'm just shaking my head this way.
Yeah.
And then they fine you. So now you're in jail and you can't pay your fine. So what ends up happening is it can get ugly real quick because of that, what you just said.
They're circumventing that you can't be thrown in jail for that.
But see, that's right, you can't, but yet that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, they may not throw you in jail for it, but then what they do is they ding you on your everything. You know, you need to buy a car, you can't because you got that. And so what they're doing is they're doing it through the back door. And so, they get away with it a lot of times.
Yeah.
I said this to Ken the other day, and, and I noticed that Nelson
Thanks,
was,
Nelson. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you, Nelson.
Yeah, just make sure.
Nelson used the word engage.
What? Y'all do it.
He used the word engage earlier, and they used, but he was engaged in human trafficking, engaged, right? So I looked up the definition of the word engage, and in maritime law, to engage, typically means to enter a contract agreement, usually for a specific purpose or service related to shipping, navigation, or commerce. It says, here are a few examples of how to engage might be used in maritime law. Engaging a vessel. This means the hiring and chartering of a ship for a specific voyage, period, or purpose. Engaging a crew. This refers to hiring or employing sailors and officers and personnel to work on the vessel. Engaging in trade. This means participating in commercial activities such as buying and selling and transporting goods relating to maritime commerce. Engaging a pilot. This involves hiring a licensed pilot to navigate a vessel through a specific waterway, harbor, or other navigational challenge. In general, to engage in maritime law implies the commitment or agreement to perform a specific service, provide a particular good, participate in a defined activity related to maritime commerce or navigation.
It's all about commerce.
It's all contract, all contract.
Transportation, commerce. So let's take a little break, and then Carrie's going to talk to us about how to get your credit cleaned up.
No one wants no one.
You can check that thing. See,
Darren.
Oh, she is. And, I was gonna, like, ask her. And then you shop it. And then come up with a you know, take notes and take pictures and come up with a way to.
So you do like a group meeting or?
I don't know, because, you know, the Republicans divided.
Yeah.
And so you got the Donna Cartwrights and Jody Muellers and that group, right? And you got this group over here. And so Jody, you know, I don't know how long.
Jody facilitating?
I think she's gonna be staying with them. All right, she's gonna be staying over there.
Is there a larger city that's nearby?
And so, but I wanted to kind of like put it on my head to go sort of come up with a thing in case you want to get a national passport, because mine's expired right now. I don't know if you can travel on Ken's. I mean, Glenn,
Yes.
huh? You can?
Yeah.
To Mexico?
There are 7 countries that they've had stamps. It was Vietnam was.
So how was that with the
traffic stop with it? Yeah, it went into Canada.
Just had a sign.
Okay, so have you gone through customs in another country and they accept it?
They did.
I had
That's what
a lawyer working on my case, and
He
in the
got
end, they just said,
international
I
bank
was
scale.
not guilty, go home.
They have, I will reach out to them and find out. Did they make their own postmaster do, or did they get one who could do? Because on the birth certificate I created for you, it's stamped.
That's kind of, that seems abuse.
Really?
Yeah, and they have an embassy. in Switzerland.
So did your,
Yeah, they have their own courtesy.
I'd rather have that
you
than
know,
a
council
national
on
passport.
I would too,
Actually,
but
every
I
chance
think
they got.
Nelson made a good point.
I had 5 lawyers, they stole
You'll
everything
find out
they
in that,
could, and left me
FAM
to die.
505.
So you can just have that in the search engine and that comes up?
Yeah, but without the dash one.
Without the dash?
One. You want the point 2.
Stole one of my money.
Just,
Point two.
yeah, just get rid of that.
I couldn't do anything, I was in prison.
And it actually says in there, a diplomatic status can be given as a national by right to the Secretary
I
of
was
State.
homeless, I was in prison. I had
Giving
a
you papers
statutory
proving
right
that
to-
you, the reason why you're a
They
national.
wouldn't give it.
And then he can give you an authentic letter to,
They
like,
took my
it says
assets.
jurisdiction
They put me
administrator,
on
so
the
like you can send one to your court.
where it
You
was
can send
hot.
one to the DMV, you can send one
I
to the
was
border
an
patrol.
old
you can
man
send
of
all-
60-some odd
So it's
years.
almost like,
They tried to murder me.
But
you
this
did
was
this,
That I would go.
it's all on that.
away.
If you read,
And they
read
could
that,
simply clean
you'll
up my
find out it
assets.
states that.
And there would be nothing. to
Getting an
stop.
authenticated letter from the Secretary
So
of State
did
without a
you-
passport.
But then you get, okay,
I mean, have
okay,
you notified
the
the
driver's
Attorney
license,
General?
all right? Okay, so this, the passport,
So what official?
it has a security on it.
That's
You
what
know,
I'm
They don't
wondering.
want to hear it.
Okay, so if you're identifying yourself
Well,
with
okay.
your driver's license or something like that.
Just so you know,
The
we're ready
judge
to
on the
write this
Supreme
down.
Court, his name is John Philip Devine.
All zeros for your
I was at a
social
group
security number
with the,
that you filled out.
I was with a group, and
Zip
he
code
told-
and bracket.
He made a speech, and then I told my story. And
Don't
then later
use
on,
it
I
as
saw
zip,
him, and I said,
do zip code.
you heard what
We're gonna take a
he
little
did,
longer
what
break,
he
So you
Gary,
bracketize it.
and then we'll
said,
start.